and welcome to another episode of Talk InfoSec. And I'm here with my colleague Sheila Dos Santos. And this week's episode, we'll be looking at social media and the security and best practices around social media. Social media has been one of the digital tools that a lot of people gravitate to over the last few years. And I've got my colleague here, Sheila, who we're just going to have a conversation around that, the benefits, the risks associated with, and tips on how to stay safe. So, Sheila, welcome to the program, and thank you for your time.
Hello, Clinton. Good to be back. Yeah, let's get straight into it. This is a really interesting topic, or to me anyway. So, yeah, kick off. But I think before we kick off, perhaps we should walk around what exactly is social media for those people that are not necessarily so social media savvy.
Yes. Okay. So, social media is like the ubiquitous word or phrase that's used to describe different digital platforms that provide an avenue for people to socialize digitally. So instead of going to the cafe or going to the mall to hang out or to the park to hang out and chit chat and have a beer or have a drink and stuff like that, it's done digitally. So the giants within the social media arena are the Twitters, the Facebook, the Instagram, the TikTok, which is very relatively new on the scene, LinkedIn, etc. There are different social media platforms for different avenues of interest. So LinkedIn is more professionally geared for professional career, and Facebook is very social and pretty much everything to all men. So you can have marketplace on it, you can sell things, you can have parties, group meeting, all sorts of stuff. But essentially, it is a digital space for people to socialize over their devices, all sorts of different devices, your mobile phone, your iPod, your laptop, and such.
Absolutely. Yeah. So it's just another way, really, of people, again, finding ways to connect.
Yes, yeah, definitely.
Absolutely, which in most cases, there's so many benefits that come with that. But with everything, when there's benefits, there's always a downside.
Exactly.
So I think with organizations today, how would you say organizations are benefiting from having social media?
So organizational benefits that are derived from using social media are varied. So, for example, they could benefit from reaching an audience that they wouldn't normally reach by advertising on a billboard, for example, or advertising on the television or advertising on a local radio station. So, social media expands the reach to a global audience of different demographics, you know. So, from that perspective, it gives them brand awareness and help build their online reputation. So you got online and offline clientele, so people who are always going into the shops for physical experience, and people who are shopping online, so they're targeting some of those people from that perspective. So if you're online savvy and use online shopping, for example, people can find you through social media and vice versa to interact with you. So brand awareness help you build your brand, grow your business, and get more brand collateral and recognition from that perspective, branding perspective. Yeah.
Absolutely. I think some of the other ways they may benefit is through communication. I think now, especially for me, it's a lot easier to just get on your phone, whether you're on social media or not, and just send them a message. You're more likely to get a response because they know hundreds and thousands of people could potentially see that message. It could be that just the relevant information's on the social media accounts. So again, it just drives people to again get that brand awareness. And not only that, have that communication directly with their customer. And not only that, it's nice to see who your customer is sometimes, you know, on the phone, you don't get that visual experience. Whereas people now, the ones that have their profiles open, you know, you're able to go in, have a feel for who your customer is, and potentially market your brand a little bit better. So
yeah.
Evidence.
Lots of benefits there. Yeah. And you touch on some great points there, really, because that's another avenue that most organizations wouldn't have had in terms of that one-to-one contact with that particular customer. They can respond to you directly, and it also helps organizations to be more agile and be more open and responsive, because if there wasn't a social media and if the proliferation of that feedback or that issue wasn't going to be so big on a global scale, they probably wouldn't have paid it any mind. But if you put that on social media, it's going to reach thousands of people and your brand is going to really look bad. So it helps them to be agile and be responsive even quicker than without the use of social media. And one of the other benefits as well, I think I didn't touch on, was by using social media as an organization, they can actually pay to access lots of audience and people. So social media will have the group of users and the demographics, and they have a huge profile of that person. They actually pay money to actually target and advertise to those people, as opposed to their traditional marketing and promotional activities as well. So using social media for organization, it's a big spend, and the social media companies benefit from that, but they also get value and real insight into how that audience interact with them as a brand as well.
Absolutely, I think you were spot on with that. Um, and as we mentioned earlier, where there's always benefits, there's always a downside.
Yeah. Yes.
I think for individuals, it's very easy to get complacent, and you're posting and posting, and you're sharing what you think is okay to share with the world. However, we always have to bear in mind there are people out there that may not necessarily have the best intentions with our information that we're freely sharing.
True.
Um, and that's the same with organizations. Sometimes you may post something that may not necessarily should have been shared straight away. It could be information on a new product that's coming out that came out too soon, or the wrong person had access to the social media account on that day, a disgruntled colleague, and they may take advantage of that account and actually share information with the world that may not necessarily be out there. So let's go through some examples where information can be misused, or some of the ways that people can actually post the right things on social media.
Yeah, yeah, or get their information or their data compromised to kind of widen the net there. So, um, in a nutshell, really, data is money, right? And no matter how you class it, how you slice it and dice it, data is money. And the more information someone such as Facebook or a different platform has on you, is the more value they can get out of that, and more value they can add to the organization. So in the context of them sharing that data, whether it be deliberately from a commercial perspective or accidentally, we just need to make sure that the purpose for which that data was captured is used for that in the intended purpose, which comes under the GDPR regulation. And other ways in which data can be breached and how organization can get into a pickle is sharing credentials for managing those said social media accounts. So I'll go back to 101. Training and awareness is paramount in every aspect of information security, cyber security, whatever you want to call it. Sharing and sorry, training and awareness is very important. So in terms of acceptable use of information and what to post, how to post it, and the context in which you post, and the rights to whatever you're posting. So again, that's another thing that a lot of people get into trouble with, really, whereby they post an image or video or some intellectual property of another person, and they get in trouble with that as well. So those are some of the quick things I can think about. What are some of the things that you can think about from a business perspective?
Oh, absolutely. So you mentioned some really good points there. So in terms of how data can be compromised, so for a hacker, for example, when you're out there and you're posting information and you've got information about your children, your family, and location, for example, it's very easy to check in. I think Facebook has a check-in feature which people use quite loosely, not realizing by checking in, you're letting people know you're not at home. You're letting
True.
people know that your home is available if you're on holiday with the family. It's not just about hackers as well. People may not have the best intentions in general. So that check-in feature is one. Maybe perhaps avoid using that. Um, Perhaps avoid having open accounts. So again, I think Instagram and some of the others give you the ability to make your page private.
Yes.
As a brand, it's very difficult to do that. The
Yes.
whole point is to have your page open and make sure as many people as possible see your brand.
Yes.
As an individual, there shouldn't be much need to have it open to the world unless you're hardly posting anything that isn't so sensitive to yourself or isn't so private. But by putting a pet's name up and posting a dog, for a hacker, that's great. I know your dog's name. The security question, what is your pet's name? There we go, we've
Yes.
got our answer. Or you're posting birthdays unknowingly. I do it as well. You post a picture on your birthday. Now everyone knows your date of birth, because not only are you posting your birthday, you're also posting your age.
True, true,
Okay,
true.
now I've got your date of birth. And it's little things that we don't notice that we do quite regularly and quite loosely that ends up getting us into a pickle in most cases.
Sure, sure, sure. And you raised some great points there, because these are little bits of information that people gather, and they gather bits here, bits there, and when they put that all together, it's shocking, because you probably use more than one social media account, and they get some information there, they get some over there, and they get the other one here. They just Google you, they look at Facebook, they look at LinkedIn, which is another area that has a lot of information about everybody and their work and life history. So when they put all of that together, they have enough to actually commit identity theft if they're really sophisticated. And there are some really sophisticated people out there. And I think in context and in general, interacting with social media and you're working in an office or a corporate environment is similar, in the sense that security comes first, even though it tends to kind of be on the back burner. So it's about having strong passwords, and don't use some of those things that you mentioned, such as birthdays, pet's name, favorite color, car, etc. So those are 101 for any handling of a system or interaction with any system, making password complex. And another risk that is very prevalent around the social media avenue as well is phishing. A lot of people get phishing emails and phishing posters again, and it links back to how you post things. So if you're posting about your favorite sporting team, your football team, etc., those are the things that people know will draw your attention in and entice you to click on, because they're going to put something up there to say, hey, what about this football team? This football team lost, and all these things are, they make a competition or a fake competition that surrounds what you are interested in. And because you're interested in those things, it makes it easier for you to be tempted to click or interact with that post or that phishing scam that they're putting. So just be mindful of things such as that as well as social media. But what else about your experience?
No, absolutely, I agree. And to add to that, I think what a lot of people don't realize, so for example, parents or people at an older generation, and sometimes the younger as well, they don't realize by clicking on these links, you're not necessarily clicking what you think you are. You could be taken to a different page, you could be taken to download something in the background where you're not realizing that actually I'm putting something malicious on my desktop or on my mobile device. Which I guess takes us on to our next one, an easy one. Protect your phone with a good password, because if there is no password on your device, I pick up your mobile device and I have access to all your social media and a lot more other things that I don't need to go into today. But, it's very easy to get access to things that we may not necessarily want others to have access to.
True, true. So yeah, so password is kind of it's transisted right throughout everything. So from your device to online and everywhere that you interact, where you need to share or protect data. Yes. So that was a mix of both the corporate and business, and then the personal aspect, really. So what I think one of the questions that we're pondering is around legislation. I mean, do you have any input around legislation, or you want to kind of differ that? I mean, in the basic context of legislation, how does social media
The
fare?
reason, I guess, legislation, we could go on for, I think we can have our own call on legislation.
Yeah,
Um, I think, one of the things we also didn't cover is, sorry, you mentioned legislation, is policies. A lot of organizations I've worked for, some have social media policies, others don't. I think it's crucial now, especially in 2020, to
yeah,
know that or people can come away, leave work, and post about your organization. If there is no policy, there's nothing you can really do to mitigate that issue. Going on LinkedIn, talk negatively about an organization, there's no policy to tell me that I can't. post my feelings and emotions about how my day was at work today, or the argument I had with my manager. So sorry, it's just because you mentioned the legislation. It's almost like having your internal legislation, making sure that you have a social media policy that people can follow and be guided in the event that they want to go on social media and vent, or in some cases, I've had in the past in a different organization I worked with, I had a colleague that went on LinkedIn and said, just finished this great project, and went into a lot of detail about what that project entailed. From that person's perspective, it was okay because all they're doing is sharing knowledge. But from the organization's perspective, now the rest of the world knows what systems we use and how we use it and what we did to protect it and what we didn't do to protect it. So without that policy, you can't expect people to know exactly what to do when it comes to social media.
Exactly, and without a policy, you cannot enforce any disciplinary or any action against that person or that organization. And I know that you've kind of touched on that because I've asked about the legislation, but from the perspective of legislation, it's something that is an evolving field, and technology and legislation is almost like a sprint and a marathon. The legislation is a marathon, and the technology is this sprint. They're moving fast and furious, and it takes time for the legislation to catch up all the time. So by the time the legislation comes into place, they're kind of 10 miles ahead or 10 years ahead in terms of technology terms. So it's a fascinating one, and it's still being debated both in the UK, in the EU, and in the US and other countries around how social media manage certain types of posts and how they manage privacy online as well. So it's an evolving one, and as I said, it's something that we can look into in another episode. But I think legislation is going to be a hot topic as it relates to social media and how it's used. And incidentally, that's the contention at the moment with TikTok in America. You know, part of it is around legislation and the data of U.S. citizens. So it is something that we need to kind of circle back on as well. Yeah, so that was some great top tips there, and some areas that we covered off, both for a personal from a personal perspective and organizational perspective. What would you say were your top 3 tips and takeaway for our audience here?
Be mindful of what you post. That's my number one. Be conscious that by posting little things like family members, friends' names, pets' names, this is information that people can take away and potentially clone you.
Yes.
Again, very easy one. So I'm going to say it because everyone can do it. Having those strong passwords on your mobile devices. I won't take all of them. Let me leave some for you.
Yes, yes, and to add to that as well, it's almost like be vigilant and be careful of what you click on as it relates to phishing, and don't be easily enticed into clicking on things or these great offers or surveys, for example. And another one is look at your privacy setting on each of those platforms and make sure that it's set to the maximum level of privacy, and only accept friends requests and interact with things that you're aware of or you know and trust. And nowadays it's very hard to tell the difference between fake news and the real news, so just be careful and go to the right source for the right information. And you touched on password already. Make sure that whatever you're sharing is not defamatory to others, because you can get yourself into trouble as well.
And just
So
a
yeah.
very quick last one, make your page private. I know a lot of people don't mind being public. Some people don't even know their pages of public profiles, but by opening up your profile, you're automatically opened up to the internet. Google, anyone can find you, anyone can use your pictures, get your information, and depending on what you post, you may not want that. So double check your accounts are private, and if they're public, have a little think about the reasons as to why you need it to be public.
Exactly, exactly. Great top tips there, Sheila. So any last words? I think we're coming to a close now.
I think we've just made it in time, so I'll leave it there. Thank you so much for having me again.
You're welcome anytime, and thank you for being on the show. Hi guys, you've been listening to another episode of Talk InfoSec, and we've just covered social media security and best practice. You can watch us on YouTube, follow us on Twitter and Instagram. And you can also listen to us on our podcast at anchor.fm Talk Infosec. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you soon. Thanks. Bye bye.